Okay, so you want to run an American farm. Buy the land, plant the crop, feed the country. Here's the part that stops most people cold. The United States is the largest agricultural exporter on Earth, producing enough food to feed around 10 billion people a year, and the average American farmer earns less in a year than a mid-level accountant in Omaha. Both of those things are true at the same time. Across the Midwest, the numbers tell their own story. Buying enough land to run a typical Iowa corn and soybean operation can mean a price tag of $5 to $15 million before a single seed goes in the ground. Machinery is another mountain. One new combine alone runs about $500,000, with most farms needing at least 2 to keep up with harvest. Every acre is a bet staked on inputs: seed, fertilizer, fuel, and maintenance, each adding hundreds of dollars more before a crop ever sees daylight. But here's where the rules of the game turn against the farmer. The price for that corn or soy is not set by the person doing the work. It is decided by traders in Chicago, watching numbers flicker across a futures screen. A local elevator might pay a few cents less per bushel than the Chicago Board of Trade price, a difference called the basis, and that can quietly erase thousands in expected income. Even when everything goes right, a good year might net a margin of $200 per acre, just enough to cover debt and keep the operation afloat. When the basis widens or the futures market drops, that margin can disappear overnight. One Iowa farmer puts it plainly: we are price takers, not price makers. We buy everything retail and sell everything wholesale. The scale is enormous, the risk is personal. All the capital is sunk before a single dollar comes back, and the only certainty is that the market will have the final word. For some, a single bad season is a warning. 2 in a row can end a family legacy. A single year of healthy yields might bring in enough to cover the $620,000 mortgage on an Iowa family farm, leaving a slim margin, just enough to keep the operation running. But the buffer is far thinner than it looks. Run the numbers across 3 years, and the picture shifts from manageable to alarming. In the first year, a modest drop in yield or a surprise spike in fertilizer prices can turn a break-even season into a $120,000 loss. The family still owes the full mortgage, but now they are dipping into savings or taking out a short-term loan just to make the payment. The next year brings a deeper hit. A bad drought or a market downturn slashes revenue even further. Suddenly, the farm is $450,000 underwater after debt service. Crop insurance may soften the blow, but it rarely covers the full gap, especially if the farm hedged prices but could not hedge the weather. By the third year, with another poor harvest or a continued slump in prices, the deficit climbs to $310,000. Over 3 seasons, the farm has lost $1.3 million in equity. The debt-to-asset ratio spikes, and the bank's patience runs thin. The debt service coverage ratio falls below what lenders require, putting the family at risk of default. For the people living this scenario, these are not just numbers. One Iowa family, staring at the stacked bar graphic of cash flow losses, put it bluntly: you work all year, and after 3 bad runs, you are out. The line between holding on and losing everything is measured in a handful of harvests. What looks like a solid business from the outside can unravel in less time than it takes to pay off a combine. Feed is the single largest expense for livestock farms, making up about 31% of all production costs. When grain prices surge, the impact is immediate and unforgiving. In 2023, a 20% spike in feed prices hit operations across Iowa and the Corn Belt. For a mid-scale hog or dairy farm, that meant feed bills jumping from $80 to $96 per head overnight. The invoice arrives: corn, soybean meal, supplements, all up, all due. Suddenly, what looked like a manageable cash flow turns upside down. Margins that once hovered near break-even are squeezed to the bone. A farm expecting $70,000 net income for the year can see that number slashed to nearly zero, or worse. The numbers do not lie. With feed at 31% of total costs, a 20% increase cuts so deep that even the most careful budgeting cannot absorb the shock. Lenders notice. Most banks require a debt service coverage ratio, DSCR, of at least 1.20 just to keep a loan in good standing. That means the farm must generate 20% more cash than what is needed to cover all debt payments. A single feed spike can break that covenant. When DSCR drops below 1.20, the bank's patience wears thin. Letters arrive, meetings get tense. The farm's future, once mapped out in careful projections, is now in question. The tie between global grain markets and local solvency is absolute. Even as the world's largest exporter ships out record harvests, the farmer reading that feed invoice is left calculating how much longer the numbers will work. A livestock farmer walks the pens at sunrise, but the real threat is not always visible. In March 2022, a hog finishing operation in western Iowa faced a crisis when porcine epidemic diarrhea virus swept through the barns. Within days, 40% of the herd showed symptoms. 12% died. The rest lagged behind on weight, pushing market-ready dates back by weeks. Feed costs spiked to $150 per head as emergency rations and biosecurity measures kicked in. The farm's revenue cratered. $250,000 were lost in a single outbreak. When the insurance claim cleared, the payout covered just 2% of the loss. The check barely made a dent in the deficit of $210,000. A veterinarian from the local extension office arrived to help contain the damage. He and the farmer reviewed vaccination records, checked ventilation upgrades, and mapped out a new sanitation protocol. The vet explained that lenders now require documented vaccination programs and rapid reporting to APHIS, no exceptions. Without them, future loans or insurance coverage could be denied. Compliance is not just about animal health, it is about survival. But the paperwork does not stop there. To keep operating, the farm must renew its concentrated animal feeding operation permit each year. The process means submitting a nutrient management plan, paying consulting and filing fees that total between $7,000 and $9,000 annually, and waiting through a 12-month review. Each new regulation, whether it is groundwater monitoring, lagoon upgrades, or odor control, adds another layer of cost, none of which is offset by higher pork prices. The farmer shakes his head and says, "The disease takes your herd, the paperwork takes your time, and the fees take your margin." For livestock producers, solvency is threatened not just by market swings or feed bills, but by the quiet drain of compliance overhead and the crushing reality that insurance only covers a fraction of catastrophic loss. When the math is done, the line between staying in business and shutting down is thinner than ever. Specialty crop growers live on a different kind of edge. In a breakout year, a 25-acre greenhouse tomato operation can post $70,000 per acre in profit, numbers that make row crop margins look modest by comparison. But that same farm can swing from feast to famine overnight. When energy prices spike above 14 cents per kilowatt hour, every hour the HVAC runs eats into the profit. In 2023, a heat wave sent electricity costs soaring to 20 cents per kilowatt hour. The grower watched as the energy bill doubled, yields dropped by a quarter, and net profit shrank to just $10,000 per acre. The difference between a windfall and a near washout came down to the price of energy. For some, a $400 per acre grant from the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program offered a small lifeline. But as one greenhouse owner put it, when the lights go off, the grant doesn't cover the gap. High-value crops promise big returns, but every input, especially energy, can turn the numbers upside down in a single season. Federal policy steps in as a buffer, but the safety net is thinner than it looks. On a typical Iowa row crop farm, the combined value of subsidies, crop insurance, and disaster payments adds up to a cash flow cushion of about $200 to $250 per acre. That check arrives whether the year is a windfall or a washout, shaping decisions in ways that can encourage risk. An extension agent in Johnson County points to a map where institutional ownership has climbed from 5% to 12% of farmland since 2015. Nationwide, institutional investors now hold about 7% of U.S. cropland, pushing up land prices and squeezing out smaller operators. In some counties, the rise in investor ownership means fewer family farms and higher lease rates, shifting bargaining power away from the people who actually work the land. The rules of survival are being rewritten, not just by markets or weather, but by the quiet force of consolidation. America feeds 10 billion, but over half of its farm families depend on off-farm jobs just to get by. Iowa land might cost $10 million, yet a bad season wipes out profit overnight. The margin between survival and loss is razor thin, and every meal depends on someone risking that edge.